Hi, I'm Rahel Philipose, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express News Show. In this episode, we talk about India's dues to Russia. We also talk about the digitization of the rural credit system. But first, we talk about the Adani-Hindenburg row in the parliament. Ever since the Hindenburg research came out with a report on 24 January accusing the Adani group of corruption, opposition parties in India have been demanding a probe into the conglomerate led by Gautam Adani. Now, the situation has reached a boiling point after the matter was raised during the budget session of Parliament, leading to an uproar and ruckus.
कोई डिस्टर्बेंस नहीं हो, नो गलत, लेकिन जब
Congress President Mallikarjun Kharge and the leader of the opposition of Rajya Sabha and senior Congress leader Rahul Gandhi raised the issue in their speeches during the session. But later, some remarks were expunged, meaning removed from the permanent record of the Rajya Sabha. This created another controversy. To know more about what transpired in the parliament this week, we speak to the Indian Express's Manoj CG. So Manoj, can you first tell us how things came to a boiling point in the parliament?
After the report, the Hindenburg research report on the Adani group came out, the Congress was the first party to react to it. I remember Mr. Jairam Ramesh, the head of the Congress communication, putting out a statement demanding an inquiry. But the contours of that inquiry, what it should be, it was not decided or discussed then. As the parliament session approached, the opposition parties got together and there was a consensus that this report and the revelations it made against the Adani group should be used to put the government on the defensive. So it was decided at a meeting of the opposition parties a day after the budget was presented. And they decided that they should demand an inquiry. And the initial agreement was that for the first 2 days of the first week, they will seek a probe and a separate discussion. And on Monday, they will join the debate on the motion of thanks on the President's address. So that was the brief background.
Okay, and during this debate, Rahul Gandhi gave a 53-minute speech where he brought in multiple accusations against the central government. So can you tell us some of the important points from his speech?
The main attempt was to, link Prime Minister Modi to Gautam Adani and to argue that because of their proximity, the government was facilitating the rise of that particular group.
एक और चीज हमें बताई गई, तमिलनाडु से लेकर केरला, महाराष्ट्र, मध्य प्रदेश, सब जगह एक नाम सब जगह हमें सुनने को मिला, अदानी। पूरे हिंदुस्तान में, केरल में, तमिलनाडु में, महाराष्ट्र, कर्नाटका, हिमाचल, कश्मीर, सब जगह अदानी, 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 अदानी।
Then he spoke about the Prime Minister's visit to some of the foreign countries, and immediately after that, Mr. Adani's group bagging contracts, be it a defense deal from some companies in Israel, a mining deal in Australia, a power supply deal in Bangladesh. So he mentioned about all that, and he kept on saying how is it that the fortunes of this particular industrial group has risen so much in the last 8 years since the BJP is in power. And he also alleged that the proximity between the Prime Minister and Mr. Adani dates back to the time when Mr. Modi was the Chief Minister of Gujarat. So he made all these allegations, some of which were later expunged.
Why was my words expunged? I'm asking, why were they expunged?
even Prime Minister take your name.
And Manoj, not only Rahul Gandhi's comments faced this expunge, but some comments from Mallikarjun Kharge were also expunged. This created a new controversy, and then Kharge came out with a statement against this. Can you tell us what he said?
Yesterday, Mr. Kharge wrote a letter to Chairman Jagdeep Dhankar questioning his decision to expunge some of his remarks. So he has basically argued that, Article 105 of the Indian Constitution guarantees MPs freedom of speech in the House, and there was no convention or provision of authentication of points made during a speech. The authentication part is interesting because when he spoke, Chairman Dhankar interrupted him several times, asking him to authenticate the charges or the allegations that he was making.
एक्सपेंज करना वो सभी रूल्स देखकर करना पड़ता है. हमने भी उसकी छानबीन की है. कौन सा एक्सपेंज वो नहीं कर सकते और रूल्स के तहत किस चीज को, किस शब्द को हटा नहीं सकते, उसका विस्तार से मैं 3 पेज में उनको रिप्लाई दिया हूं. वो देखने के बाद शायद वो सेटिस्फाई हो जाएंगे.
So Khadge in his letter to the chairman argues that there was no convention in that sense. He quoting the rules, he basically argued that the chair can prohibit a member from speaking when the allegation is derogatory in nature, which can, hit the dignity of the house. But criticism of the government, its policies and their impact, Mr. Khadge argued, can never be equated with dignity of the house. So the decision of both Lok Sabha Speaker Om Birla and Chairman Rajya Sabha Chairman Jagdeep Dhankar to expunge certain observations made by Mr. Rahul Gandhi and Mr. Mallikarjun Khadge has now triggered another controversy, which the opposition would relish in that sense, because it will keep this issue alive. There are more talking points for an opposition leader when such actions happen.
Right. And at the time of this recording, the uproar still continues without any solution on the horizon. But Manoj, are there any talks or discussions on how the opposition wants to continue or register their protest?
The first leg of the budget session will end on Monday, 13th of February. The parliament will go into a 1-month recess. So there is little opportunity for the opposition to, continue raising this issue in parliament. But of course, outside parliament, every party is free to raise these issues. At least in the case of Congress, they had already held one round of street protest, holding demonstrations outside offices of the Life Insurance Corporation and the SBI, 2 institutions which have, significant exposure in terms of loans and all to the Adani group. So, of course, there will be street protest, and the AICC's plenary session will happen in Raipur on 24th, 25th and 26th. So, of course, we can expect the resolutions that will come out of the Congress plenary session and all to mention about this particular controversy. And in terms of statements, in terms of, public utterances, the Congress and most of the opposition parties will continue to take this issue forward.
Right. So, Congress is not the only party that raised the issue. Other opposition parties like AAP, TMC also registered their protests. But there are reports, even though different opposition parties have agreed to come together to question the government about Adani, they've disagreed about the method of raising this issue. Can you talk about that?
So the Congress and most of the parties felt a JPC, a Joint Parliamentary Committee, should be constituted. The demand should be that a JPC should be constituted. But some of the other parties felt a Supreme Court monitored inquiry would be better, headed by the Chief Justice of India himself. So they decided that both the demands would be put forth. And on Monday, the parties continued the disruptions because some of the parties, particularly the Aam Aadmi Party, the BRS, the RJD and the SP and the Shiv Sena, felt the opposition should not allow the discussion on the President's address to take place, since their demands for a separate discussion and a JPC or a Supreme Court monitored probe was not met. So some of the parties differed and 3 parties boycotted: the Aam Aadmi Party, RJ, BRS and the Shiv Sena. The rest of the parties joined the debate.
And what about the division within the Congress party? Are there disagreements on how to move forward with the issue?
There is no real division in that sense, because some of the Congress leaders had argued that the party and the opposition should not allow the discussion on the motion of thanks on the President's address or the discussion on the budget to take place. Instead, they should be, creating this disruption in Parliament. Some other leaders had argued that it's better to have a minimal amount of disruption and then join the discussions where the leaders can put across their points. So that was one. And there has always been a larger debate within the Congress on how to target or when to target and should target at all Prime Minister Narendra Modi. But that aside, most of the leaders, I believe, are very much on board. There is no real division in that sense in the Congress over this issue.
And next we talk about Russia. Ever since the United States and Europe imposed sanctions on Russia because of its war against Ukraine, India has found it difficult to buy oil and defense supplies from the country. And in addition to this, it's also struggling to pay the outstanding rubles that it owes to Russia. And this is a concern because the majority of India's military hardware comes from Russia. In fact, right now, authorities are concerned whether this delay in payments could affect the future delivery of critical military equipment. Now, the Indian Express's Amrita Nayak Dutta recently found out that India is looking for alternative ways to clear this outstanding debt. In this segment, we speak to Amrita about what she found out. So, Amrita, how much money does India currently owe Russia for defense equipment that it's purchased?
Right now, the dues have added up to rupees 28,000 crore. So this includes the dues for which India has had contracts with Russia from the Indian Air Force's side, from the Army side, from the Navy side, as well as with the Defense Research Development Organization, that's the DRDO, and various DPSUs, the Defense Public Sector Undertakings. So the total amount is coming to around 28,000 crore in rupees.
And can you talk about the extent to which India relies on Russia for its defense purchases?
Most of India's military hardware come from Russia. Now, some estimates make it 60%, some say 70%. But yeah, a large number of India's military hardware, which includes your aircraft, which includes aircraft like MiGs, the Sukhois, which includes various ships with the Navy and various missiles, the Indian Army's tank fleet, various air defense systems. So a large part of India's military hardware comes from Russia. So if you ask me about the 28,000 crore rupees, so that includes a lot of spare and maintenance requirements that Russia has to provide India for the maintenance of its various equipment that is in the inventory of the military. Now, that is one thing. And apart from that, some of the contracts with Russia, I would say that they include long-range surface-to-air missile system, that is the S-400, which was recently bought by India. The third unit is yet to arrive to India very soon. Then you have the two Tushil-class ships that are being built in Russia, an unspecified number of Smerch multiple rocket launch systems, rocket projectiles, Russian-made X-31 missiles, among missiles, aside from the spares, as I just said. So these are some of the equipment or some of the contracts which have happened in the recent years with Russia.
Okay, and so these outstanding dues, are they mainly because of the sanctions that have been imposed by the US and Europe? Or is this an old problem as well?
So India has been facing a problem with making ruble payments even in the past, when the United States had passed the Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act, that's a CAATSA. So there were challenges while making ruble payments for defense-related supplies. But India did find a way. There were something called Vostro accounts that Russia opened in Indian banks. There were two banks, the Indian branches of two Russian banks, which is VTB and Sabah Bank, and they were dispersing the dollar equivalent in Indian rupees for those particular payments. So India did find a way, even though there were challenges in the past. However, once the sanctions were put, these very stringent sanctions that Russia was put under after the war with Ukraine, it became increasingly challenging, and India found it very difficult to sort of process the payments.
Okay, so because of the sanctions, India is struggling to pay back the rubles it owes. So what options is it looking at to clear this debt?
So when it comes to foreign currencies, India and Russia had held several meetings on this last year on how to pay back the ruble payments in foreign currencies. And two options were discussed. One was the UAE dirham and the other was the Chinese yuan. Now, my sources tell me that India clearly was not comfortable in paying back in yuan. Dirham is still an option on the table, even though India is slightly uncomfortable in paying back in foreign currencies because of the sensitive nature of most defense deals. So this is one of the options that India is considering for paying back the ruble payments to Russia.
And could you elaborate on this part a bit about the nature of the deals and of these defense deals being sensitive?
Yes. So what happens, as you know, that most defense deals are a little sensitive in nature, in the sense there are a lot of confidentiality clauses and stuff that is involved in that. So when you are paying in a foreign currency, there are fears that there could be some amount of information which any third country will get to know about the defense deals that is happening between two countries. So while paying in a foreign currency is one of the options being considered, and the UAE dirham is the most likely choice in this case. However, people are, I would not say 100% comfortable in making the rumal payments of such high values through a foreign currency, even though one of the options that they are considering is this.
And so, Amrita, besides paying in foreign currencies, what other options is India looking at?
So, since the dues have accumulated quite a bit, India is considering 3 options right now to make the payments to Russia. One, of course, is paying back by dirham. The second option that is being discussed, and it is not yet being finalized, is to make the payments through a hybrid form of sovereign bonds. Now, sovereign bonds is not a very common way of clearing payment. So that's why it is being called a hybrid form of sovereign bonds, in which the Indian government will commit to pay the fixed amount later at a convenient time when the war is over or whenever the Russian side agrees to. And that will be inclusive of the face value and interest. So this is the second option. The first option is dirham. This becomes the second option. And the third option, which interestingly has come from the Russian side, is to offer some stakes to Russia in government-owned enterprises, which Russia can liquidate at a convenient time.
And how would this last part work out?
So there are many government-owned PSUs and other enterprises where Russia could be given some shares or some stakes. And this can be later liquidated by Russia whenever it finds it suitable. So this is the third option that is being considered. And, this can be even applicable to some of the joint ventures that India has with Russia. For example, we have the BrahMos, which is a joint venture. So what happens at a later time when some investment is required in BrahMos from the Russian and the Indian side both? One option is being considered in such joint ventures. India can pay for the time being for the Russian side too. So multiple options are on the table. The 3 primarily which we discussed, foreign currency, stakes in government-owned enterprises, as well as paying back through sovereign bonds. So these are some of the key suggestions that are being discussed.
Right. And have sovereign bonds been used before to clear such a debt?
So sovereign bonds is a debt instrument. It is not exactly something that you typically use to repay your dues or outstanding payments. So I don't think that has happened before. So in a way, this is the first time that such an option is being considered to clear payments.
And in the end, we talk about the PACs, or Primary Agricultural Credit Societies. PACs are cooperative organizations that provide credit and other financial services to farmers and rural communities in India. They were established as part of the Indian government's efforts to promote the financial inclusion and improve the availability of credit to farmers. This year, the union budget, which was presented on 1st February, announced rupees 2,516 crore to computerize 63,000 PACs. According to the union government, this will help maintaining the transparency and accountability of the PACs, which are often criticized for putting local politics over financial stability. To understand how the computerization of PACs will help the farmers, in this segment, we speak to the Indian Express's Partha Sarathi Biswas. So, Partha, could you begin by talking about how these PACs work?
So, the full form of PACs is Primary Agricultural Credit Society. Now, what are PACs? PACs, as the name says, are cooperative bodies, and their main aim is to transfer credit to the farmer. Now, as they are cooperative bodies, they are formed by the farmers at the village level. Now, the main aim of PACs is to dispense credit, and this credit is the short-term agriculture credit. Now, like any business, agriculture also requires working capital. And for agriculture, working capital is very important, and timely delivery of agricultural credit is important, because without that, the whole cycle goes for a toss. So in the cooperative credit structure, at the village level, you have the PACs. At the district level, you have the district central cooperative banks, and at the top, you have the state cooperative bank. So the credit flows from the state central cooperative bank to the district central cooperative banks to the PACs, and the PACs distribute to its individual members.
And can you explain how farmers get together to form these PACs?
So the farmers come together and they form a body, and amongst themselves they elect the office bearer. So every pack would have a chairman, a board of director, and a secretary would be appointed to look after the day-to-day working of the pack. What would be the work of the pack? The work of the pack would be to collect documents of farmers, understand their credit need, and after verifying their documents, they would send the whole list to the District Central Cooperative Bank, who will then dispense the credit once they get it from the packs.
Okay, so these packs are essentially helping farmers get loans and credit. But in what way are they different from commercial banks?
So in commercial bank, individual farmer has to approach the nearest bank branch along with his documents, which would include the 712 land extract, the certificate from the revenue department, and a no due certificate from other nearby banks that he does not have any outstanding loans against him. And then he has to apply for the credit, and which will be deposited in his or her account directly. Now, the strength of the pack lies in its numbers. So in case a single farmer is approaching a bank, he would have very less bargaining power than say 100 farmers approaching through their packs. Now the strength in this is that every year you need agricultural credit, and the commercial banks, they require the farmer to apply every year along with the valid documents. In case of packs, this work, the paperwork, is done by the pack itself. The secretary and the office bearers would contact the farmers, would do the paperwork, and then pass on this information to the DCCB, and the credit would flow seamlessly. So packs are important because they are one, the ground level cooperative bodies, and B, they provide the farmer the much needed strength in numbers. And that pack would have more voices than say a single farmer if he or she is talking to a bank.
And why is the government planning to computerize these packs?
Now, all banking transactions happen through CBS. That's the core banking software. So the State Central Cooperative Bank talks to the DCCB through CBS. But for the DCCB to pack, we do not have a very strong software-based platform. And one of the reasons why that has not happened is because most of the packs do not have the necessary infrastructure or the budget to go for digitalization. That's why the union budget has talked about digitalization of packs and has allocated around more than 2,300 crores for the digitalization of around 60,000 packs. This digitalization would have quite a few benefits. One of the clear benefit would be that there would be a lot of transparency in the dealings of the packs. And secondly, in case there is some delinquency, there is some credit misbehavior, then it would be brought to light immediately and things can be rectified. Another important thing, it has been noticed that in areas, in districts where the district central and the cooperative credit structure is strong, farmer suicides are less. And in districts where cooperative credit structure is weak, farmer suicides are more in number. So this is one of the main reasons why the government wants to revive this whole structure, wants to get into digitalization of the packs, and wants to ensure that there is a lot of clear credit behavior and clear credit structure that comes back to place.
And Partha, you write that there's a lot of politics that goes on in these packs. So do they also witness politics based on caste or even individual rivalries?
Yes, that would seriously happen. For example, if you are in Maharashtra and if you are from the Maratha community, they form the bulk of the farming community. So majority of the pack members and the chairman might be from the same community. In case you are, say, the chairman of a pack and you have some bone to pick with, say, a member of your pack who is a farmer, you might just direct his file to be sent a bit later. And for agriculture, every day counts. So in case the agriculture credit doesn't come on time, then that farmer who has had a bone to pick with or has had a serious disagreement with the chairman would suffer. So politics happens, and a lot of dirty politics also happen in packs.
Okay, so the idea is to increase transparency and reduce the politics that goes on inside these packs. But is there a concern regarding the level of digital literacy among farmers? And are there things that the government is doing to increase that?
So overall digital literacy is quite high because many of the government schemes, like for example the Pradhan Mantri Kisan Bima Yojana, that's the crop insurance scheme, also the PM Kisan. These are all through bank transfers, and for which there are common service centers where the farmers, they actually deal with digital world, and either they fill up the forms themselves or get someone to do it. Yes, in case of banking, there would be a different ball game altogether. And government as of now has not talked about much of it, but the digital literacy and agencies like NABARD, like the DCCBs, they are always in the forefront of inculcating digital literacy and digital behavior amongst the grassroots levels. So once the computerization starts, I guess there would be a separate training programs or separate literacy programs for the PAC members and the farmers to harness the full potential of this platform.
You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was hosted by me, Rahel Philipose, and written and produced by Utsa Sarmin with the help of Anwiti Singh and Shashank Bhargava. It was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone who you think would like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Podcasts and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.